I wish to make a complaint.
Sorry, we're closing for lunch.
Never mind that, my lad. I wish to complain about this parrot what I purchased not half an hour ago from this very boutique.
Oh, yes, the Norwegian blue. What's wrong with it?
I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's dead. That's what's wrong with it.
I mean, obviously, right now the horror show that's going on is the bombing and bombardment and destruction of Gaza and the death of thousands of civilians, including many children in Gaza. But if we don't let ourselves get enthralled by the horror of it, how do you think about this moment in terms of left politics? And are there opportunities for the left in this political moment, in this conflict between Israel and Gaza, do you think?
I mean, is there any immediate opportunities? I mean, I have to confess, I don't really see them at the moment, and it's kind of it's a very hard thing to think about because it doesn't seem like there's any because we always have these debates about two state or one state, and it seems kind of so abstract now that there's just no point even getting there. It seems like more immediate concerns are upon us, like how to stop the bleeding, for example. How do we just stop the mass killings of Palestinians in Gaza? Just how do we even get to there first before we start thinking about any sort of wider political vision? But it is clear that the only kind of way an opportunity could arise is that two massive shifts have to happen in both Israel and among the Palestinians. That first of all, the Netanyahu regime and his ethno-nationalist allies have to be overthrown, have to be gotten rid of some way. That's like the first thing. If that happens in Israel, there's like an opening that you can intervene in, and obviously among the Palestinians, that they are clearly even more so now, like politically fragmented and distorted, like and they're ruled by two national bourgeois gangster regimes. The one in Ramallah, the Palestinian Authority by Abbas, and Hamas, who are also national bourgeois gangsters. And that also kind of has to change, because there's been an impasse for like a very long time in Israel, Palestine, and where it just seems like nothing's going to change that much. Like there's this kind of uneasy status quo where Israel believes it can just sort of contain, the Palestinians, that the Palestinians are a problem that they can contain and manage, and sort of, and that the Palestine question will be treated like how, say, the Western Sahara in Morocco or Cyprus is, that, the United Nations will have a seminar about it every once in a while, but nothing's really going to be done about it. And October 7th really kind of just blew that away. That idea was just simply unsustainable. And what the left can
well,
do,
we'll see about that.
Yeah.
Actually, we don't know that I mean, my fear is that in a year, that what seemed unsustainable will be returned to.
True. Because there is the possibility that Israel really does maybe not eradicate Hamas, but really sort of conclusively defeats them, or really destroys them to the point that Hamas can't really function as they once did.
Right.
And there is, things can get worse, because, the Israeli government is trying to find a way to how does it solve the Gaza question once and for all? How does it? Because there's this idea of using the Sinai as the rubbish bin for Palestinian refugees. It's possible. Like the Egyptians have said that that's a red line, but things can change. That by hook or by crook, Israel will get its way, and maybe who knows? Maybe the Americans will strong arm the Egyptians to say you've got to accept these Palestinian refugees. I mean, who knows? And
especially if they could attach it to a ceasefire and an ending of the bombardment and the death of Palestinians and Palestinian children. It would be a PR win, and then it would be maybe a slow rollout of this process. I don't know. It wouldn't be a PR win, really. Couldn't be, but it certainly could be. It's possible. But what I see on the left in the United States, and again, my view is myopic. I'm just talking to a few of the leftists I know, right, and reading their publications. But is this conflation of the United States with Israel, and by extension, a refusal to accept what the left's real political role is in the United States. Right, so like there are calls to defund Israel, which, okay, I'm not necessarily against that, but I would think a stronger call would be to overturn would be to call for an election in Israel to get rid of Netanyahu. Like the U.S. left should be saying down with Netanyahu rather than defund Israel, because that, like you said, would create an opportunity for the Israeli left and for a change in the Israeli approach to the question of Palestine, whereas the hardline right in Israel is calling for defunding to break up the relationship between Israel and the United States,
so that there's no strings attached, so that they have more of a free hand to do
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but it seems like the American left is so committed to this settler colonial narrative, maybe, or committed to backing Hamas as representing the oppressed Palestinians, that they just refuse to even consider changing conditions in Israel. And the influence that the American government, American state, and the American left might have in Israel. But it would seem to me there is more of an opportunity in Israel right now than there is in Palestine.
Yeah.
But that's like, to say that, I sound like a Zionist to people, which even though my aim would be to overturn Zionism in Israel.
I think there is, I suppose, this idea that Israel is sort of like just beyond any hope, that you have to, it's like some kind of cancer that has to be kind of destroyed. But again, that just because it's like, again, I use the example of the United States. The United States, is a liberal, it's that Enlightenment cosmopolitan democracy. It's a civic, we all mentioned like its Republican values. There's no reason why Israel, even as a Jewish state, quote unquote, even as if its ethnic and cultural and religious shadow is Judaism, there's no reason why that should substantively and really impinge upon the rights of non-Jews in the population. Like there is a different version of Israel that could arise. It doesn't have to be this kind of Zionist, ethno-nationalist, like criminal like regime. That there is different possibilities out there. Now the question is, how can you enact that politically? What are the political forces in Israel that one can support for this aim. And that there is initiatives. There are initiatives. One example of it would be, I mean, they are a bit social democrat, but like Hadash, which is a socialist, Arab and Jewish, like party and movement. It has seats in the Knesset. I mean, you can make the argument that, well, that's a force that could be, supported, like, because I think they believe in like having a non-Zionist kind of like political system that's like, draw up a proper constitution and a bill of rights for equal rights for all of its inhabitants, Jews and Arabs. And I think that's their position. Yeah, that's I suppose that's one thing that could be supported, or maybe even more radical. How, if you will, how can like the socialist left reconstitute itself as an internationalist, revolutionary force to transcend capitalism altogether, and in doing so would also transcend like the nationalisms in Israel, Palestine, and elsewhere.
Yeah, and it strikes me that both of those options, especially even the first one, which is more reformist and social democratic, are kind of off the table for the international left and the American left right now, because the American left and the European left really doesn't exist. Like we don't have organizations that are seeking political power. We aren't organizing on that basis, and haven't been for quite a long time. So because we don't exist except as YouTube channels or podcasts or publications or academic conferences, we do not have a way to really support and influence the Israeli left, let alone the Palestinian left.
And Joe Biden's not going to listen to the left on this.
Right. I mean, even if, Joe Biden, look, Vivek Ramaswamy or Joe Biden or Trump or might defund Israel. That, if our aims are on that level, there could be a way in which that's taken up by the established capitalist order as that would just salve the American conscience, wouldn't it? You could then say, well, it's nothing to do with us. We don't support Israel anymore. You can't blame us for it, even though Israel could still be doing what it's doing to the Palestinians. It's just, it's nothing to do with us now. Right.
So,
right.
And as a socialist and internationalist, I don't want. I wouldn't accept that. It's like, no, I still want to, I still want to struggle for, the emancipation of the Palestinians, and
right.
so that they can have even just ordinary bourgeois civic freedoms,
Yeah, that's what I am thinking we might aim at. No, I can't. I'd like to overturn the commodity form of production and go to Mars. But at the moment, how about we have the right to speak and organize politically? Let's do that one. Right. And so, like, when I say I'm not for defunding Israel as a slogan, it's not because I don't think that breaking the relationship between the United States and Israel on the level of armaments isn't necessary. It might be. I don't know. But if that's the horizon of our politics, if that's the aim, well, we have to think through what the unintended consequences of that will be, and realize that it is not going far enough. But it's easy for me to sit here and critique. A lot of people, I hear these, the left is in the back of my brain going, your white privilege is speaking or something. but to be clear, like, I don't have a easy, ready-made platform or solution or even a slogan. Maybe I would offer up, down with Netanyahu as a possibility, but it's it's not an easy moment, and I was not surprised but saddened by the immediate response to the October 7th attack. Not because I was so horrified that people would be embracing violence. I mean, although I think people should be more reticent about that than they are, but because it just didn't seem to me to be at all thoughtful. It was just sort of automatic reaction to.
It was this idea of, well, we have to support the Palestinian resistance, whatever they do, quote unquote. Because obviously Palestinian resistance can mean a broad range of things, and obviously if you kind of make apologies for October 7th, you're also defending Hamas's actions and PIJ, and it gets to this argument. It's not because the critique of Hamas and PIJ and October 7th isn't just a moral critique or a moralistic one. It's also a political one. Because what are they doing it for? For what purpose? To what end? Because it's not just about. It's not because the question is. It's not. Do we oppose what Israel is doing to Gaza and the Palestinians more generally? Of course we should oppose it. It's like no question. But it's just, how do you oppose it, and to what political end? That's the point. That's the point of it. It's not
right.
It's not some kind of cringe liberal moralism against oppressed people using arms against their oppressors. It's not that, because that's what people think. What people like you and me are saying, that we just think that the Palestinians should just lie down and just die. That's what they think we're saying. No, that's not the point, because these questions are very difficult questions. And it's not unique in the history of the left, because even within Russia, like for example, I think even Chris Couture made this point to you, that in Tsarist Russia, I mean, conditions weren't exactly great there. And even so, there were many arguments within various revolution movements. How do we combat this oppression we face under the Tsar? There were the anarchist propaganda of the deed people, and the social revolution who tried terrorist actions, who think that assassinations or throwing bombs, that was the solution. That if you take out the Tsar, then the whole thing will collapse. And then you have people like Lenin or Trotsky who argue against it and say, no, that's not going to go anywhere. In fact, it might even be more counterproductive. Because Because in doing so, you're going to give them a easy pretext to repress you and then destroy your own movement and politics.
Right. Yeah.
So, and look what's going to happen to Hamas now. What did October 7th really achieve for them? Beyond the kind of brief, ecstatic bit of pride that, we humbled the Zionists now.
It gave Osama bin Laden a new lease on life for a little while on TikTok. Yeah. But otherwise, I don't see it doing a lot of good. It's very hard for me to say what it might be. Hold on one second. Hi, I'm recording an interview, but I'm glad you're home. Huh? Ralph Leonard. Say hi. I will. My son Noah says hello. He just got back. Just to go back to, how we've been talking about what kind of an impasse we're in, how we should debate tactics on the left and strategies. And I think we absolutely should. And it's very unfortunate that it gets framed in these moralistic ways, as if what your choice is to decide who is the moral actor and who is the immoral actor, and then side with the moral one. That I think that is a dead end. I do feel the pressure of that, though. I mean, it's difficult to
course.
to stand up and say, oh, I don't support Hamas, and not be heard as saying, I support the bombing of Gaza, which of course I don't.
Because
of course I don't. Right?
Yeah, because it's like, I mean, it almost should go without saying, but of course you do have to say it that
Right.
that obviously what's going on in Gaza is beyond catastrophic. Like the amount of people that have been killed or injured, the amount of destruction, like it just in the infrastructure, like this is worse than the previous like massacres that have gone on in Gaza, in the years before, before now, and clearly trying to have some kind of wide, trying to zoom out and having a wider discussion about, what the political ramifications are about this phase of, of recent conflict since October 7th. Seems like, obviously, it kind of seems like you're kind of taking this sort of detached, like, view, airy in the clouds, without any of the urgency of kids are dying, we must stop it now, and we must condemn the people who are doing this killing of children.
Right. Yeah. But I was asked to do that by a Palestinian. Fakhri, who's written for us, said he can't do it as a Palestinian. Take that that long historical cold view. But Fakhri al-Zardawi, who has written for Sublation Twice, said that the task of Western Marxists should be to think.
Yeah, and it's not just happening on the Palestinian side; it's also happening on the Israeli side. That if you even like talk about the I hate to use this word, context of October 7th, why it happened, and the ramifications of that. It seems like, oh, you're just kind of making excuses for what Hamas did to all those Israelis, or you are, and especially since the Israeli government since then has screened this video called "Bearing Witness" about it's a compilation of all the various atrocities the Hamas and PIJ fighters filmed on their GoPros in the kibbutz theme on that day. And again, like, so a lot of the discourse, obviously it's important in of itself, but in a sense it can be a distraction from this fundamental political discussion that needs to take place. So a lot of the time with this, we're debating whether this or that particular atrocity happened or not, or how many Israeli women were raped or not. Shit like that. Yeah, shit like that. And it's like, first of all, it's true. It did happen. Those atrocities absolutely did happen. So any denial.
I mean, some of them did, and some of them didn't. Let's say about that.
Yeah.
How about like the beheaded babies probably didn't happen, as far as I can tell. Right.
The whole thing, kids in ovens, that was not true. That was debunked. But some of the other ones, absolutely true. But that discussion is a bit of a sideshow. And I know that sounds kind of harsh and kind of wrong to say it like that, but it's like all this kind of going down this rabbit holes it diverts us from that necessary long zoomed out historical,
like the presumption behind debating this is it's this legalistic approach to the problem, which I'm not, again, like, I'm not against that given in different contexts. Like if there was a settled end to the conflict, and there was a effort to mend the relationship, and part of that effort would be to prosecute those who committed war crimes on both sides. Then there would be a context in which, the question of who was raped and who was beheaded and how many children were killed and what circumstances and to what degree it was an intentional policy of the Israeli government to kill civilians. All those things could come up, but right now we're not there. We're not in a position where we can make those kinds of determinations.
And it's more of a PR battle about who's the biggest victim.
Right. It's a propaganda war.
Yeah.
Between two powers, neither of which I want to back or support. So why am I going to decide whose propaganda is truer in this moment? Instead, the question should be, how do we change this? How do we change the players? How do we get rid of Netanyahu? How do we undermine Hamas so that we can create a different outcome? I think.
And so that there isn't any more wars to be fought in Gaza.
Right. Yeah.
That's the point.
I want to ask you one other question about Hamas, which is that I've been told by a number of people on Twitter and other places that I am failing to distinguish between the soldiers who actually, attacked on October 7th and what motivated them and who they represented, and the political leadership of Hamas, and that it's really two entities, and that the soldiers who attacked on October 7th represent the Palestinian will, and they did it maybe even independently of the political leadership. Have you heard this argument yourself? That I should support not Hamas, the political entity, but Hamas, the street fighters and the soldiers and the Palestinians, men who have joined.
Well, I haven't really heard that one, but that still no. I'm not going to support Hamas. No, because even forget like any kind of atrocity horror story you want to put out. It's just politically, like, they're a reactionary group. They're anti-socialists. They're petty bourgeois nationalists. They're gangsters. No, I'm not going to support them. You don't have to.
What about if they're lumpen proles in Gaza who are, the young men who are born into unemployment and whose prospects are so bleak, and who joined Hamas because of their conditions and as a way to fight back.
Yeah, you can explain why these things happen, and you can try to be, I suppose, empathetic in terms of truly understanding it. But that doesn't mean you have to support their political program, because Hamas are not the wretched of the earth. They are a political outfit with a political agenda, and that's how they should be critiqued.
Right.
Because if you want to engage in this world of politics, you are going to have to endure the ruthless criticism that comes with it. And the same thing would apply to us, the left, if we were actually engaged in like revolutionary struggle. We would have to face the same thing. Now, it's not just, as one of these Hamas leaders said in an interview, we're the victims, therefore we can do anything. No, that's not how it works. That's not how it works.
Right.
You are a political agent with agency, so you can make your own choices and make your own political judgments. And I'm sorry to say, Hamas have made the wrong judgments and wrong choices. Even in bleak conditions, you can have choices. Just as I made the mention of Tsarist Russia. Okay, it's not exactly Gaza, the prison camp, but it's still a horrible position. And and various revolutionary groups debate with each other among the tactics. And the fact that they debated with each other how to deal with it implied that they had political agency. It's not. The idea. Hamas are not some kind of natural, kind of primordial reaction of the Palestinian wretched of the earth to their oppression. They are a political outfit that came out of a particular context and history, and that's how they should be critiqued. And I'm not going to yield on that.
Yeah. Thank you. You said it better than I could, but you said what I have been trying to say.
Right.
Well, listen, we've been talking for about an hour and a half, and I feel like we should wrap it up. I got to go talk to my son, but thank you again.